This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your host, Radio Joe Hughes, and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day, wherever you're listening from, and welcome to IAQ Radio, plus this week's episode number 520. We've got Rusty Amarante joining us live. He's the Director of Operations for Belvoir, and we really appreciate him breaking away from, I know it's a very busy time right now, to join us on the show. Also want to let listeners know that if you get a chance, stop by our Facebook page, give us a like, go to YouTube, comment on any of the shows, and of course, you can download shows through Podbean. We also have continuing education credits available if you email me at joe.hughes@iaqtraining.com. Before we get started, let's thank our platinum sponsor.
IAQ Radio Platinum sponsor is John Don Products, where restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at jondon.com. That's JONDON.com.
I also want to thank our gold sponsors, Particles Plus, Healthy Indoors Magazine, Gray Wolf Sensing Solutions, and AEML Inc. Laboratory. And of course, our association sponsors, the Indoor Air Quality Association and the Restoration Industry Association.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick@cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man with this week's IAQ Radio Trivia question.
Hello, everyone, and congratulations to John Lepoter, Indoor Air Quality Solutions, Orlando, Florida, who was first to identify what hurricanes Florence in 2018, Fred in 2015, Emily in 2005, Ivan in 2004, and Hugo in 1989 had in common. They were all Cape Verde hurricanes, which started in Africa. The IQ Radio question for today, Friday, October 12, 2018, has been sponsored by Ideas, the solution chemistry company, creating unique solutions to odor removal, surface cleaning, and decontamination problems. Here is today's trivia question. How many Category 5 storms have ever hit the continental United States? Back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Cliff. Rusty Amarante is a certified restorer and the Director of Operations for BELFOR Property Restoration, the global leader in disaster recovery. He is also the president of BELFOR Franchise Group, a leading national franchisor of service brands, including 1-800-Water Damage, DUCTZ International, and HOODZ International. Rusty's career started in the 1970s in suburban Philadelphia and has ranged from the owner of a small cleaning and restoration company that grew to a large regional full-service restoration contractor before joining the BELFOR team in the 1990s. Rusty, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Yep, it's great. It's good to see you again. Well, let's go ahead and get into it.
I'm going to turn it over to you for the questioning.
Thanks, Joe. Well, Rusty, it's good to see you. As a kid, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Always great to see you, Cliff. I wasn't quite sure, but I do know, my dad owned a gas station and he owned a small grocery store. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to have my own business. There was never any question about that. So,
Okay, cool.
It was time I just needed to search out what that was going to be.
No problem. Well, I guess when you searching and somehow you stumbled into the cleaning industry. I mean, how did you land there, and how old were you when you started?
Yeah, I went to junior college for 1 year, and then during that summer, I took a part-time job with a guy who had a cleaning company, and I always remember it very clearly. He, at the end of the job, he handed me the bill to leave on the desk. We cleaned up after a puffback in somebody's house. And it wasn't typical of me, but I did open up the envelope and I looked at how much the bill was. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm pretty good at math. And I did the math, and I was like, this is a very profitable business. And, I started talking with him about it, and next thing I knew, he and I bought a franchise together, and I never did go back. I regret it. I never did go back and finish school. So that was, I was not quite 21 when that happened. Yeah.
That's when I started too.
Yeah.
All right. Marty King was a big influencer in your restoration career. What are the most important things and lessons that you learned from him?
Marty was certainly a big influence. There's no question about that. And there was certainly several other people that would fall into that list. I think the biggest thing that Marty did for me indirectly was he gave me pride about our industry. Back then, right, we didn't even really know what restoration was. If you went to if you met somebody or you talked to somebody and they said, hey, what do you do for a living? It was even hard to answer. Well, I'm kind of in a cleaning business, but I'm kind of I'm a janitor, I'm kind of a maid service. There was really no description of our business. And most of the time people would just kind of roll their eyes and walk away because they were as confused, understanding it as we were trying to explain it. And then it was Marty who came along and, with great pride, made the industry, certainly through the CR class. I'm CR number 50. He generated great pride. And all of a sudden, I felt myself standing a little taller and being a more, feeling like this was a real business, a real industry. And that frankly changed a lot for me. And I felt like, this was real. This was something that had a lot of potential to it. So there's lots of different things, and I could probably say about Marty about little specific things he helped with. But the biggest thing was the overall pride I think that he brought to our industry, and feeling of genuine professionalism, and we were folks to take serious, not to be pushed around.
Good. Joe, next question.
I know you've done a lot of industry volunteer work. Did you start that early on in your career, or did that come a little bit later?
No, I started that really, relatively early. And, you guys said how Marty influenced me. There's no question about it. Somebody else who influenced me was Cliff. And I remember back in our tri-state days going to those conferences. And, at that point, maybe I was in my mid-20s or whatever. But I remember Cliff saying to Lou, hey, why don't we give this kid a shot to maybe get up and talk a little bit about what he's doing and some of those things. And I had never spoke in public before or anything like that, but I did. And amazingly, people applauded and wanted to talk to me afterwards. And it was kind of a very neat experience. And I owe that all to Cliff. And then from there, you built great relationships with terrific people who were very knowledgeable and very passionate about this business, and were amazingly open about how to do things, not from technical sales, a business standpoint. And I always got way more out of it than I ever put into it. I can promise you that.
I think most people that take it seriously do get more out of it. At some point, you wanted to be an instructor. Tell us about that.
Cliff, I think that came back to that experience in Seven Springs. That was a really kind of great feeling. Cliff, I remember at Seven Springs, people literally lining up to talk to you to get your advice or your expertise on things. And I thought it was really cool. And your booth was always the one that had the most people around it. And that's because people wanted to talk to you. And I thought, boy, I just wish I was that knowledgeable, about this business and about this industry. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to buckle down and focus on this and see what I can learn and see what I can do. And it all just started to take kind of a life of its own. And next thing I knew, I got asked to do more speaking engagements. And then from there, decided to become an instructor. and it just kind of kept going.
Curious, Rusty, what kind of classes did you teach? Like water restoration tech, or was it an RIA class?
I became an IICRC instructor for fire damage. Did that for quite a while. Another guy, Rick Love, and I co-taught that for several years. We had a mobile room that we would pack up and ship to different locations and unpack it in hotels. Experience of how to restore and made them get dirty. And hotels were not real happy with us when we lit our little room on fire in the middle of their conference rooms. But yeah, we did that quite often. And then from there, we did a whole bunch of different marketing classes. I got one time to, team teach with Marty on the CR class. And then I can't even begin to guess how many CE classes I did for, insurance agents, adjusters, and that kind of stuff. But probably in the hundreds,
Interesting. Cliff?
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
Say pre-Belfour, what was the biggest accomplishment? What were you most proud of with respect to your career prior to joining the BELFOR team?
I think probably, I think I had amazingly loyal people, and that meant a world to me. And for anybody who started these businesses from nothing and you build them, you really need folks like that. This is certainly nothing you can do on your own. And I just had a lot of folks that latched on to my little company and were as much committed to what I was trying to do and what we were trying to do with the business as I was. And because of that, I felt like we could outperform any competitor and we could outdo any competitor, and we always did. And I guess to that point, but many of those folks who were with me way back then are still here with me at Belvoir now. Some of them retired, but other than that, they've continued to stay loyal, still here.
It must always, I have another little small business, and every payroll, I think to myself, it's just great to be able to help these guys make a living, feed their families, buy a home. Did you get the same feeling as I do?
Oh, there's absolutely no question about that. I've been invited to a lot of weddings and know the kids and kids' weddings and things like that through the years. And and that was certainly one of the things that was appealing about joining Belvoir, was I was able to create upward mobility for a whole lot of people that I would not have been able to offer that to, as a small business. And many of those people really took advantage of those opportunities and capitalized very well. And they've moved up very nicely within the Belvoir world.
Actually, we have a text question from a listener. They want to know what an Earl fire is.
That has to be Rick Love. That's the only person in the world that could possibly ask that question. Yeah, there's oil and oil.
Earl. Very cool.
I could never understand what Rick was saying, and he could never understand what I was saying. But we managed to map our way through it. Yeah.
So I guess Rick was from the South then, huh?
He was from the South. Yeah.
Whereabouts? Well,
he was from St. Louis, and I forget now where he was born and raised. But he did have a little bit of a very subtle kind of Southern accent, so to speak. And of course, me being from Philadelphia and having that Northeast kind of Rocky Balboa type sound to us, the two of us made it pretty interesting and pretty fun.
Cool. Well, looking back on your career, what's the funniest thing that ever happened on a restoration or cleaning project that you can talk about?
There's certainly lots of funny stories. Some I can't tell, but I know Pete's on the line, and I think one of Pete's favorite stories is years ago we did We did a large Fortune, probably 10 company, had a large fire loss, mostly smoke in their headquarters up in New York. And a few of us contractors got together and we went up there and we got in there to do the work. And we had developed such a great relationship with the client that they, they trusted us and wanted us to do everything. And, every now and then we've all been beat up once in a while by an insurance adjuster for something. And this just happened to be one of those situations where it went completely the other way. The facility manager was this little Italian lady, a beautiful woman, probably, I don't know, in her late 30s, early 40s. But she ran that 500,000 square foot facility, with union people and all that, with the way she wanted it. She didn't take any nonsense from anybody. And I remember there was a hallway that had some smoke damage to it, and she was struggling with whether or not she wanted to get the ceiling tiles replaced in that hallway over the weekend or not, because the CEO of the company flew in on a helicopter every morning, and that was the entrance for him to go up to his office. And she wanted to make sure that looked good. And it was like a Friday afternoon, and we couldn't locate all these ceiling tiles, but we could actually get them there, but it was about a $50,000 FedEx bill to get them overnighted from somewhere in the Midwest. And the insurance adjuster happened to be in there with us, and he just said, hey, there's not a way in the world I'm paying for that, so don't even think about it. And he just looked at him, and she said, you'll pay for what I tell you to pay for. I'm FedExing those things. They'll be here tomorrow. And, this thing will be done. And I remember him looking at her saying, I don't even know why I'm here. And she said, I have no idea why you're here either. These guys are doing a great job. I will pay their bill. I'll put everything together. I'll send you a summary, and you'll send me a check. And I hope I don't have to talk to you till then. So it was just kind of a little bit of a moment for us restoration guys who would never have that kind of horsepower.
Hey, Pete, we've got the Restoration Global Watchdog here.
Yeah, that's the G-rated version of the story. It's a lot more hysterical when we can actually name all of the people.
That's
and
right.
I remember when you originally told that story, when you called the tile place, they had to work over the weekend to get the tiles, and the guy started laughing. He thought you were joking. But look, there's actually a very important underlying message in that story. And this is one that our friend Mickey Lee has often talked about publicly too, is the importance of developing the relationship with the client. And that really supersedes everything. And quite frankly, I'm not so sure the industry hasn't went sideways, in the recent years, that they bend over, it seems. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go off the rails, but that was a message I guess a lot of the guys learned years ago, and maybe that's something that could be passed on in the future.
Yeah, well, to the G-rated version of that, the people that were installing the ceiling tiles were union contractors, and the G version of that was the guy from the union said to the lady who was the facility manager, there was no way in the world he was going to install these tiles, and so on and so forth. And she got right in his grill, and she said, "Oh, yes, you will." And
yeah, and look,
he was twice her
anybody who works in any of these union cities, try getting your drywall delivered up to the floor if you don't take care of the elevator operator. It reminds me of that Rodney Dangerfield movie where he was in the class and he wanted to know where this guy was, if they were building the building in Fantasyland, because apparently try working in a union city and not dealing with that. Where do you put that in the line item invoice, by the way? Is there some kind of a special place where you can actually put that in the line item invoice, or do you have to bury it?
Yeah, no, we always laugh about that, and it's a real cost of doing business, and obviously there's no line item for it, but it's that's why a lot of these projects are as complicated as they can get, and you need to maneuver your way through that. Yeah.
Rusty, as the owner of a restoration business, working nights and weekends and Super Bowls and holidays and so on and so forth, did you ever suffer from burnout? And if so, how did you cope with it?
Yeah, Cliff, I never suffered from the physical requirements of the job. I'm not saying there weren't times where I got a call at 2 a.m. and as I took the call, I was like, oh, I just really don't feel like getting out of bed. But once I got to where I needed to go, I was fully energized and loved what I did. My first wife didn't quite appreciate that lifestyle, and that's why she's my first wife. But
I had one like that too.
Yeah. Well, you got to be half nuts to be in this business. There's no question about it. Okay. But I think the thing that burned me out, was frankly the challenges of having enough capital to finance a small restoration business. Mm-hmm. And, there was nothing better or nothing worse, I should say, than, to look at your income statement and on paper see how profitable you were, but to look at your bank account and see no money there. And that really, really was very, very challenging. And it goes back right to the loyalty of the employees. It wasn't so much about how much money I could put in my pocket. It was about taking care of our people and taking care of the great vendors and all that sort of thing. And so that was something that was clearly, that burned me out probably more than anything else. And it went through peaks and valleys, right? I mean, there was times, where I seemed to have had more money and more cash than I really knew what to do with. And then there were, all of a sudden that was all exhausted and the credit line was cashed out and you felt the pain. So, yeah, just the ups and downs, I think, of especially smaller restoration and growing restoration business.
To follow up on that, how did you know it was time to exit, and what were the deciding factors upon which you decided to sell the service business?
Right. I think it goes really back to what I had said earlier. I think creating upward mobility and other opportunities for the people in my company, that was a huge motivating factor for me. I was looking really hard back then. Do I add more offices? Do I, to create these other opportunities? But with that comes obviously greater investment, more capital, more risk. And, I still say it to some of our Belvoir guys, you need to be careful when you gamble with somebody else's chips, right? I mean, if I took those risks and it didn't work out, then it would have been ultimately our people that would have suffered. So when it was Inricon that acquired my company, when Sheldon came along and had the capital and the resources, and also had a lot of the exact same desires about what he wanted to see us build and grow, in the Philadelphia market, it seemed like a pretty good fit. And I took advantage of that opportunity.
Okay. Any unexpected or unpleasant surprises with your exit?
Yeah, people ask me that often because we obviously continue to acquire companies. Is for whatever reason, and I wasn't quite sure, but after the closing and they had acquired the business, and the money exchanges and all that stuff is fun. For probably a good month or so, I had seller's remorse, and I'm still not really sure exactly why. I didn't have a boss. I didn't have somebody breathing down my neck. Sheldon wasn't calling me, wanting to know what time I was at work. My role and responsibilities didn't change at all. But I really went for about a month or so wishing I hadn't done it. And as time went on, maybe I just started to get into the flow of things and started to do some of the stuff I wanted to do, and that feeling went away. But I always look back at that and can't quite understand why I had such regret, but I did.
Pete, we're going to break for halftime in a minute. Do you want to ask another question before we do halftime, and then afterwards we're going to talk about Belvoir?
Cliff, you guys are doing great. I'm Just enjoying my buddy Rusty there. You look just relaxed and comfortable there, sitting there in your office. So anyway.
I'm anything but comfortable and relaxed, Steve.
Hey, Rusty, I mean, there's quite a few people that called in here, and some of them, Barry and others, some of them I haven't, we don't get to see that often. And right. It's funny, it's kind of out of respect that they stop in the middle of the day to listen live. They could always get the blog and the podcast, but they actually called in. So I think that's pretty impressive, to be quite honest with you. Anyway, go to halftime, boys.
All right,
Joe. Let's do halftime, John. We'll be back with the second half of our interview. We've got Rusty Amarante. We've got a great show. Belfour's Director of Operations.
IICRC Radio Platinum sponsor is John Don Products, where restoration and abatement contractors shop. Visit them at jondon.com. That's JONDON.com. Gold sponsors are Particles Plus Engineers and Manufacturers of feature-rich particle counters and air quality monitoring instrumentation. Learn more at particlesplus.com. Count on us. Healthy Indoors Magazine, a free online digital magazine for industry professionals and consumers. Subscriptions available at healthyindoors.com. And AEML Laboratories, free FedEx shipping, great pricing, same-day results, and never a rush fee. Learn more at AEMLinc.com. Gray Wolf Sensing Solutions, who use advanced sensor software technology and embedded computers to provide superior environmental test instrumentation. Visit them at wolfsense.com. Association sponsors are the Indoor Air Quality Association, a multidisciplinary organization dedicated to promoting the exchange of indoor environmental information through education and research. Learn more at IAQA.org. And RIA, the Restoration Industry Association, the granddaddy of the restoration industry. Network with leaders. Learn more at restorationindustry.org.
Okay, we're back for the second half of our interview. We've got Rusty Amarante. Rusty, I got a question for you. With Belfour now, it appears to me anyway, you've got a much bigger responsibility and authority than you've ever had before. Did you know you had it in you to take all this on? I mean, this is a big role you have at Belfour, and the follow-up to that, what helped prepare you for taking on this role?
Wow, I'm not sure if I know how to answer. I think I was always very much up for the challenge. And when you look at Belfour, it's a very big business. We've got over 7,000 employees now at Belfour, and but it's really made up of a lot of small businesses, right? So going into a lot of our day-to-day operations is not all that big of a stretch for my background and my expertise, and I'm very, very comfortable with that. And as time, and I've been with Belvoir now at the end of November. It's hard to believe it'll be 19 years. So when I was acquired, the company was much smaller, and it grew, and I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to go and grow with it. And so I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Well, I'm just curious. Did you go take any classes or conferences, seminars it's a big jump to being in charge of 7,000 people from whatever your company was.
Yeah. I've always taken the opportunity of going to any of the conferences and seminars and things like that were available as it specifically related to the technical ends, I should say, of our business. But Sheldon Yellen, who is the CEO of Belfour, is a very, very unique guy. Has a very basic, fundamental way of how we operate and run this business. And so the answer is no. I didn't get any advanced training about it. not because maybe it wouldn't have been a good idea, not because maybe there wouldn't have been advantages of it, but Sheldon was very, very good at and is still very good at keeping us focused and on the basics of running our business. And people ask a question similar to what you just did of me about our company overall. And one of Sheldon's favorite sayings is, the thing that we do at Belvoir, probably better than most companies, is every day we just get up and do a lot of blocking and tackling. We don't look for the long bomb. We're not looking for the superhero moments. We just kind of get up and block and tackle every day and keep our head down and just keep moving the ball a little bit down the field further and further and further. So and that's basically, my function at this company.
It seems that, MBAs and financial people run businesses differently. And it seems that, the way that Sheldon runs it is the way that restoration people run it. And I think it's pretty good proof that, I think had Sheldon been an MBA and you've been an MBA and all the people that, whose companies that you purchased were MBAs, I think the company would have failed a long time ago. And, because I think it's what's in your heart, it's what's in your gut, and not taking no for an answer. And I think there's a lot of pride, that goes into, not failing and doing whatever it takes in order to, satisfy the client, and, caring about your people, first and foremost. I think many other companies just don't do that, and my hat's off to you. And I think we had similarities, and I think what a lot of restoration contractors did in terms of running their business, I think the people were the biggest asset. Well, since joining Belfour in a senior management role, how have your opinions on insurance damage repair and restoration changed?
In all honesty, it's really not changed a whole lot, right? And I read and hear some things once in a while, but I think the problems that we had 35 years ago of gaining mutual respect with the insurance companies is still a challenge now, right? Dealing with what you can legitimately bill and what we're entitled to make is still a challenge now. Now the TPAs didn't come around probably in, last 20, 25 years, whatever it was. They bring a new dynamic to it. And they, like contractors and like insurance companies, there's good TPAs who I think help our industry, and I think there's bad TPAs that hurt it. But there's certainly a new dynamic to it. I get a little concerned, about some of the consultants that if we create a need for over consultants in our business, we will due to fire and water damage. The mold industry, gold is mold. Our industry, but more importantly, the consultants ruined that, right? Because they got into it and they wrote these obscene, ridiculous protocols. In some cases, the restoration cost back then, we more than a few times I was in courtrooms where I had to testify against a contractor who wrote a proposal for more than the value of the house. And we all as contractors look pretty silly. So the insurance companies did what we would do if we were in business. They just stopped covering mold, or they obviously changed the way it was written. And I think if we allow, consultants to get into these businesses and tell us how to do water loss, I don't need a consultant to tell me how to do a water loss. Don't need them. They're in the way. Don't need them to tell us how to do a fire loss. They're in the way. They're going to make it expensive. They're going to delay it. It's going to be a problem. So I think, those kinds of things I see creeping into our industry. And I think as restoration contractors, we need to stand firm and say, no, we don't need an expert to tell us how to do it. We are the expert. So, you know, just find something else that you want to consult on that you know nothing about. But we got this one covered.
Amen. I agree with you 100%. How has your prior experience as an instructor influenced Belfour's staff and technical training?
Yeah, you know, Cliff, we the training department is one of the areas that reports up to me. We've got, I think, well, we just had a change, and that's why I'm hesitating. But we've got 6 full-time trainers in our business in Belvoir that are obviously 100% dedicated to Belvoir. Mm-hmm. And I say this with great pride about them, certainly not about us, but I don't think these are the best trainers in Belvoir. I think they're the best trainers in the industry. Mm-hmm. They're just spectacular. So again, I got to give big credit to Sheldon, who, you know, I said, Sheldon, this is what we need to do, and this is what we need to spend, and we need to spend more because we want the best. You know, there wasn't any hesitation on the other end of the phone or you know, sitting across from the table. He's go, you go do it. That's what I want. I don't want it. I don't want a C player. I don't want a B player. I want the best players, and you go make that happen. And that's what we've done. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about. Joe, did you want to?
I was just curious. I wanted to follow up on how the restoration industry, you know, the TPA issue has become a big issue for people in the industry now. And I'm wondering, how else have you seen, or what other changes have you seen, or do you see coming to the restoration industry in general? I mean, you know, we have a lot of people that do that type of work that listen. I think some of them are a little worried that, you know, that they may get pushed out of the industry to some degree, or it may become like the automobile insurance industry. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you need to understand, you know, I mean, the auto body industry is an amazingly profitable business. So I think anybody who claims that, you know, that industry has gotten squeezed or taken over and now they don't make any money is just simply misinformed. Yeah, I'm sure there is the mom and pop body shops that don't make money, but the ones who get the big picture get it. And, you know, I think that, you know, the single biggest change, obviously, the greatest influence from the TPA world is technology. So if you're not technically savvy and have strong enough abilities to properly communicate, you know, electronically, it's really not going to matter how good your services are. You're just not going to make it. But I think that comment goes beyond the TPAs, right? I think that goes to any kind of ongoing relationship that you may want to have, you know, with an insurance company. If you're dealing with, you know, direct policyholders and whatever fallout you have with the insurance companies at the end you have, then it's a little bit of a different game for you. But you know, there's some risk with having that as a business strategy. Not saying it doesn't work, not saying that it's not right for some people, depending upon the size of the business. But yeah, I think if you're sitting back thinking I'm the best restoration guy in my area and I do not have to comply with any technology because my work will speak for itself, I think you're probably a little misinformed about where it currently is, and certainly where it's going. It's going to get more intense. It's not going to get less. Yeah.
That's an important point for a lot of listeners. I'm glad I asked. And then I guess the follow-up would be, in this industry, we get, you know, employees that may or may not be that technically savvy. Any tips for people on how to get them up to speed on this new technology as it comes out?
Yeah. You know, we've talked about this for ages, right? And that and it's one of the things I have had the chance to speak to groups about from time to time. But you know, for for people in our industry, for the most part, the folks in the field, the restoration people, not carpenters or painters or that kind of stuff. But you know, these folks need to be built. They're not already assembled. But I mean, you know, a carpenter comes to you with his tools and his trade. A plumber comes with tools and trade. Electrician tools and trade. Most restoration guys don't have the tools in the trade. So I think the single most important thing you got to do is find somebody with the right attitude. I think you got to really make sure that they're showing a sense of commitment, loyalty, and then you got to invest the time and the money in training. And I think you got to create career opportunities for them where you know, that they see some growth and potential and other opportunities. So we try, you know, very, very hard to do that. Having said that, you know, we have people that have been doing demo work for 25 years and they're perfectly content doing demo work and don't want to do anything else. And there's people that, you know, have been doing water losses for 25 years and don't have a desire to do anything else. And we love those people every bit as much as we do the ones who want to move up through the company. You know, there's plenty of opportunity and plenty of places for people to be a part of our company. The guy my age who refuses to accept technology is probably not going to be a good fit, you know, for your company for the next 10 years. That's for sure.
Okay. Yeah, but the guy with your knowledge and experience, that's a whole other. You know, you are what you know, and you know that experience, you know, is you know, you can't learn. You know, today I think a lot of these guys go to an IICRC class and, you know, they hang up a shingle or
right.
You know, technicians have never seen a real water loss or a real fire, and they're running around and, you know, with little initials after their name and pretty impressed with themselves. And, you know, they quote this standard or they quote that standard verbatim, but, you know, if they get a situation they cannot think out of the box, they just go back to quote the standard or, you know, quote the instructor or whatever. That's one of the things that scares me. But let's talk about franchise.
If I could, just for a quick second, I was obviously more kind of referring to the technical guy in the field. But to your point, you know, Sheldon has a flip phone.
Okay.
He has no idea how the hell to use an iPhone, or he doesn't want to learn, and he's not going to learn. But you can walk up to him and say, hey, you know, what's the phone number of, you know, our president in Belvoir, Italy, and he'll recite the number to you. I mean, but as far as him being a guy who's going to, you know, engaging all kinds of advanced technology, and I guess a flip phone would not be very advanced, he doesn't want anything to do with it. And he's very guarded about us as a company in what we embrace and what we don't. So, you know, and I'd argue he's probably the most knowledgeable guy in our industry.
Right. Well, somebody Consigli uses a flip phone too. So,
yeah. Well, there you go. Well, then you can show that in common.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about BELFOR franchising. Why is BELFOR franchising? And tell us a little bit about something called BELFRAN.
Yeah. So the BELFOR Franchise Group, we started back in 2007, and it wasn't exactly planned, but we were doing a lot of work in Hurricane Katrina, and we were subcontracting a tremendous amount of duct cleaning. And the guy who had that business said, hey, you know, I've got this small franchise opportunity, and would you guys, you know, maybe be interested in partnering up with me? So next thing you know, we owned this DUCTZ. It's DUCTZ duct cleaning franchise business. Mm-hmm. And we were franchising. And we got that up and going, and certainly learned a bunch as we went through that process. And then we started HOODZ, HOODZ, and that's a kitchen exhaust cleaning franchise. We clean more commercial kitchens than any other company in the country, probably in excess of 1,000 a night. Shortly after that, we started 1-800-WATER-DAMAGE. Well, we didn't start that. I take it back. We acquired that. It was a very small franchise out of Seattle. We got it. We kind of took it apart, rebuilt it, and started selling franchises. So when we acquired it, we had about 26 franchises. We knew that was going to net down to about 20, which it did. And we just sold our 92nd franchise the other day. We'll exceed 100, shortly, certainly by year end. So we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of excitement there, and we're really, really happy about where that goes. And then and Sheldon has no diminishing appetite for us to add additional brands to the franchise group. So we're still looking to either acquire or greenfield something if we see it makes sense.
Cool. You've been a franchisee. How does that experience prepare you to be a franchisor?
Yeah, it's a great question, Cliff. I think it did a lot, because being on the other side of that, I think you have some expectation of what the franchisor should be giving and delivering. And we try to focus on those things very much. And, certainly, starting my own restoration business, I can always look back and think what would have helped me most. So that's what we talk to our people about is, what is it that we need to deliver day in and day out to help these people build and grow these businesses, keep them focused. Don't try to go into 100 different directions. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Follow the plan, stay committed to it, and we have undisputed evidence that when folks do that, it absolutely works. For the people who always try to outsmart it, we have undisputed evidence that it doesn't work, because they simply just don't, they just don't want to follow the plan.
You were talking about the importance of technology. Does Belfour help them with this necessary technology that's needed to compete and excel, in today's market?
Absolutely, 100%. Sure. I think we're very committed to making sure that our people have whatever resources they need to perform their job as well as possible. And certainly from going over to the Belfour side, where we deal with large losses, major hurricane events. We lean more and more on technology for managing these events than we ever have before. And because of that, we're way more efficient, we're way more effective, and we do better than we ever have. And,
with the technology, do you have, like, for instance, 1-800-WATER-DAMAGE? Is there a central, center that answers the phone and assigns the projects, or does each office do it for themselves?
Yeah, so we handle that a couple of different ways. We have our own call center in Ann Arbor attached to our franchise group business. So if a franchisee is not able to handle their calls for whatever reason, they pass it on to the call center. The call center will take it for them and deal with it. If they are in their office and they want to be answering the phone directly, then we switch it back to them. And deal with it. For our national accounts and certainly national events, such as Hurricane Michael, everything as it relates to that specific area where the hurricane gets funneled through the call center, it gets vetted, and then it moves on to the appropriate area where the
how are Belfour's franchise offerings different and or superior to the competition?
I think we feel, especially with 1-800-WATER-DAMAGE, and that there's certainly some horsepower with having the Belvoir name behind you, although you may be a franchise, we are probably more way more friendly at assisting with capital needs and things like that. So some of the challenges that, I talked about when I started my business with having the capital to move the business forward. If our franchisees come to us and they need some help financially and it makes sense and they're good people, we'll probably assist with that. I'm not too sure of how many others do it, or certainly do it to the level that we do. And then we got a very deep bench, right? So if a particular location gets too busy, we can backfill them with other locations or with the Belvoir staff or whatever, if you're an 800 water damage person, regardless of the size of the project, you don't ever have to say no. You say yes, because you got the full weight of Belvoir behind you to make whatever it is happen.
One of the things that you talked about earlier, both in your business and in Belvoir, were upward mobility opportunities for employees. Right. And I guess one question is, do some employees in Belvoir see being an entrepreneur and owning a 1-800 franchise or a DUCTZ franchise or a HOODZ franchise, do some of the wannabe business owners come internally or do they come externally? Or
yeah, but most of them come externally, but without a doubt, we've certainly had some folks who have come within the Belvoir ranks and have wanted to explore those opportunities, and we've done it with some of them. So yeah, the answer is yes to both. But the vast majority really have come from the outside, and that's where most of that growth has come from.
Okay. I guess before we go to the roundup, I think I want to turn it over to Pete to pose a very interesting question that he fashioned. So I'm going to let him ask it.
I'm scared. Okay.
All right, Cliff, you're talking about the final question?
Yeah, your final question.
Oh, yeah. I had a handful of comments and stuff that I wanted to make, but, Rusty, actually, I'll tell you the question. Think about it, and then maybe we'll wrap the show up with it. The question that I really wanted to ask, and it's always tough when you're asked one thing, to come up with one thing. And, Marty, years ago when he started the NIFR and really was the beginning of the buildup of restoration in the industry that we know today, he always referred to it as being the damage repair industry, and he wanted to see it become a profession, hopefully in his lifetime. Whether it actually did or not is probably fairly subjective. He's passed. Are we really a profession? Aren't we? I don't know. I suppose I could take an argument either way. But, kind of in the light of, Marty's looking down to listen to you to answer this question, what would he say? What would he think? What do you think is the single most important thing that the industry needs to do in order to actually move forward so that we are viewed as a profession by the people we serve, the people that maybe burden the cost of restoration? Anyway, so maybe you can answer that. That'd be a good thing to wrap up the show. So Cliff and Joe, you want to move to the roundup? I got some comments and a couple other little things. Not quite as serious.
Well, let Rusty answer the question first.
You want to answer first? Go ahead.
Are you prepared to answer that, Rusty?
Yeah, I think, Pete, I would absolutely argue that I think we are a profession. I think we are a real profession. I think we are certainly recognized, as a legitimate business, and that we are professionals. Is it to the level we'd like it to be? You can probably always make it better, but I'd argue strongly with you that we're not. I think Marty'd be proud of seeing where we brought the industry. Having said that, I guess one thing I would say, and I think it's okay for us as an industry, and I would suspect Marty would support this very much, to say no sometimes. You don't have to say yes to every job. You don't have to say yes to every requirement. You don't have to say yes to somebody who's constantly trying to squeeze, your pricing or estimating or whatever. It's okay sometimes to walk away from jobs. It's okay to turn some things down. And I know, for maybe some of the listeners may be thinking, well, that's easy for Belvoir to say, you're a big company, you can afford to turn some stuff away. I'd argue is your small business able to accept some of these jobs and still survive? So, it's a very delicate balance, right? You can't, I think the bully approach is absolutely wrong. I think the loud or arrogant approach to screaming no doesn't really accomplish a whole lot. I think you can decline jobs and presumed opportunities, in a professional way, and hopefully it's looked at on the other side with respect, right? In that they're saying, there's a reason these contractors are saying no to us. And as long as there's always a big bucket of people saying yes, and they're not even sure why they're saying yes, then I think it's a little harder to elevate the overall industry.
Great point. We're going to go to a roundup. We'll be right back with today's guest, Rusty Amarante.
It's the 2018 Healthy Building Summit, October 25th through the 27th at Seven Springs Mountain Resort in the gorgeous Laurel Highlands of southwestern Pennsylvania. Network and practitioners, prominent researchers, and industry leaders in an intimate and informal setting. This year's theme is IEQ, Remediation and Restoration, Research to Practice. This is the only industry event that performs live research and links researchers and practitioners. Marquee sponsors include Hayward Score, helping people live healthier lives, and Particles Plus. Count on us.
Okay, also want to announce we had a winner of the contest to name our Healthy Building Summit mascot. Thank you, Luke von Oldenburg, for coming up with Aristotle. I didn't realize, Luke, that aero means air. And then, of course, Aristotle was a scientist and philosopher. So thank you, Luke. We'll get your prize out. And thanks to all of you that participated in the contest. We've sent out quite a few coffee mugs and IAQ radio hats. So we'll see all of you in about a week and a half at the summit in Seven Springs. So let's get back to finalize our interview and do the roundup. We'll start with you, Pete. What do you want? I know you had a couple comments.
Yeah. So listen, Rusty, the first thing on a light note, this thing I didn't realize I had in common with Sheldon. We still both have a flip phone, thanks to Mr. Zlotnick bringing that point up. But I remember a convention, and I don't remember whether it was when we were still ASCR before he rebranded, but it was when the Blackberries were around. And I remember there was a bunch of us sitting around one night in the bar at a lounge, and you made this comment. You said, "Hey, Pete, a bunch of your friends are wondering whether you can upgrade to the new technology." And I said, "Well, why are you asking that?" And you said, "Well, you couldn't imagine me being able to communicate kind of at the speed of pushing a button like that quick. You wanted to saddle me to my computer." So I said at that time, in honor to respect my friends, I would resist upgrading to the technology. But, I'm tired of listening to Ashley and all my Aussie buddies. So finally, I'm going to break down. And next year, I'm going to actually have a phone. I hear they take really good pictures, too. Do you remember that conversation, Rusty?
I do remember. I just don't know how you can convey volume through typing. But
yeah, it's just
figure it out.
It's amazing. So I surprised myself.
You can talk without using your hands, Pete.
Yeah, well, I couldn't talk if you did that. So listen, a couple on a serious point. I remember, Rusty, for one thing, I really echo this whole thing with the consultants. I remember one of the S500 meetings several years ago when you were the vice chair at the S500, when they brought up the whole idea of, after the mold standard, and wanting to have consultants in every water loss. And, you kind of went into a rant, and Mickey was still working for Munters at the time, and you looked over at Mickey and said, "Mickey, don't you agree?" And he kind of shook his head, "Yeah, what Rusty said," because otherwise, why are we out there, and who's going to pay for this? And I'm a little, I think, although you may not have directly said it, I'll say it. I mean, I think this potentially is the direction where potentially the fire stuff is going. I mean, at the end of the day, Cliff has always advocated that there was probably more a risk in a lot of these fire losses,
Sure.
post-combustion, if you would, than the industry was serious about. But whether that means that we need to have somebody come in at the beginning of a project and kind of tell us that, I don't know. I suppose that'll kind of play itself out. But I do think it's something that the industry should be concerned about because, like with the mold, the insurance industry can only take so much. It isn't like the pockets, they're not playing with monopoly money. The other thing that you had brought up, and I remember you made this comment when we had the TPA event last year in Nashville. One of the things, and look, all the TPAs were in the room. We had a packed room, and you made a comment about, with a lot of whether the carriers or the TPAs, there's some, young 22-year-old person that's telling experienced contractors of what they should get, and they're reading out of the playbook and all this kind of stuff. And what are your thoughts? Where's that going? And how much of a problem is that in the communication with the industry?
I think that the good and serious TPAs have a genuine appreciation for the restoration contractors. And they know that they cannot deliver a quality product without quality contractors. So with great respect to several, 4 in particular that come to mind, TPAs, I know I've turned down, great opportunities and great business opportunities with insurance companies because they said, no, you want to beat up the contractors too much. You want to, if that happens, we're going to have all the bottom feeders of contractors, which means we're going to provide a lousy service. And ultimately you, Mr. Insurance Company, is going to fire me, Mr. TPA. You're going to get rid of me. And it's because we couldn't, the customer service will be so bad. So we rather just pass. So for the TPAs that do that, I have great respect and great admiration for them. Don't get me wrong, the insurance companies are still obviously their customer, but I think they are trying very hard to make it more of a mutual respect and deliver some of our message. About 2 months ago, I had a call with a guy who has a TPA, and about 10 minutes into it, after he was telling me how much money we make and how profitable we are and how much we abuse the insurance companies, and he went on this rant. Of course, he never ran a restoration company, never did a water loss, never did a fire loss, has no idea what he was talking about. I said, we're just not a fit, and thanks, but I got other stuff to do, and we turned him down. And he was on the other end of the phone, amazed that how dare I not want their business. That TPA is a perfect customer for a competitor, but not for us.
Yeah. So Rusty, listen, to kind of wrap things up, I guess if the big kahuna over there at Belfour is the undercover boss, IICRC Radio has you as this is the undercover interview.
Very, very flattered.
I think that Cliff is always so insightful, put a lot of thought in. I think telling your story, is more important than you may think. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, in not only your comments, but in some of the stories that are told. But the one thing I'd like to say in closing is that I remember when you asked me, when you were the president of RAA 10 years ago, I think 2008, and I remember when we had that little celebration dinner at a board meeting afterwards, you kind of said to me, how do you think I did? And I kind of paused because I wasn't going to patronize you, and I had to think about it. It was a tough question to answer because I remember a year or two before you talked to me and Cliff and others about should you be the president, because it was a big commitment. And it was the last single year presidency the association's had. We've had 2-year presidencies for quite a while. And what I told you was, I said, well, Rusty, being a president and serving as a volunteer in the nonprofit sector, most presidents don't get credit for the stuff that they did because someone else has to finish it. And they get credit for things that they really shouldn't because they finished what the guys before them started. And that's kind of the nonprofit life. So I kind of have two questions, one on the past and one on the future. How do you think, and what kind of impact do you think all the years that you served at RAA leading up to be the president, you know, how do you feel about it now looking at it 10 years later? And then the final thing is, you know, with the things like the PIRC, which, you know, some of the listeners, and you may recall that this is the third or fourth attempt that the industry tried to kind of assemble with that. Started back with Dale Saylor when he was the head of DKI, and then REA, and it went around, and now the Hendlers have taken it over, and I think are doing a good job following in the collision industry model. So where do you see that going, and what do you see that's happening? You know, it kind of spanning about the last 10 or 15 years. So where was it then, and where do you think it's going now? Because I know that you guys support that, and a lot of the big players support the PRC and hoping that it can make the industry better. So anyway, that's kind of my final thoughts, and asked a question for you. Enjoyed the interview. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Pete. Very nice. Pete, don't think I didn't realize you still haven't answered my question about how I did as the president, but so I can only, you know, probably not as good as I may have thought, but you know, I said it, and so it's only going to be redundant. You know, I got way more out of what I put into volunteering with anything in our industry. I got way more out of it than I put into it. And anybody who is thinking seriously about becoming, you know, the president of our, you know, any significant role in any of our organizations, I think they need to do it with the understanding that they need to take it seriously, and it is genuinely a commitment. If you're just looking to get your name in the magazine or posted someplace and ride on the coattails of everyone else and do absolutely nothing, I really wish you wouldn't volunteer, because it's not fair that only a couple people, you know, have to do all the work, and yet an entire group or, you know, some particular folks, you know, claim recognition for it. These things are serious. They're important, and they impact a lot of people. So I think if you want to do it, I think it's great. I think you should, but understand that you need to be committed to it and take it seriously. And it's more than just something to add to your resume with no substance behind it.
Cliff, final question?
No, I just wondered whether Rusty wanted to comment on the second part of Pete's question, which was the PIRC.
Yeah, you know, I think the PIRC has absolutely the very best intentions, and but let's face it, it's a lot of heavy lifting, and it's not going to be easy. And again, it's the same thing there. You know, the people who decide to contribute to it, I think need to understand it's a serious commitment, and they need to put the time and the energy into it. And the more that they're able to do that, the better results PIRC is going to have. You know, PIRC is they're kind of the vehicle, right? I mean, they are how to move it. They may be the engine behind it, but they need people, and you know, they need somebody driving and steering and making sure that it's, you know, the vehicle isn't just parked, that it's actually moving. And that's all the people in the room that show up at those meetings. I wish I had more time to contribute to that. I don't, but as you know, Dale obviously works for us now, and he's there all the time, and we'll probably have some others begin to contribute as well. They got a tall order ahead of them. Make no mistake. Yeah.
All right,
Rusty.
Go ahead, Cliff. Go ahead.
I just was going to say before we go, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything we missed?
No, you know, I'm very flattered you guys and asked me to do this. I think it's kind of cracks me up that folks would have that much interest in it. But I'm very flattered by it. I've enjoyed and been very honored to have Cliff as a mentor and a personal friend, and my friendship with Pete has been long and deep and very meaningful to me. So it's been great that I don't get to see or talk to you guys anywhere near as much as we used 2 years ago, but you're always in my hearts, and think the world of you guys.
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We've had some great comments, and I think I'm sure you've got to run. But this is Radio Joe Hughes saying thanks to this week's guest, Rusty Amarante, the Director of Operations for BELFOR Property Restoration. I want to thank my co-host, the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. At the controls, John, you got to have faith, and the restoration industry's global watchdog, Pete Consigli. Thank you, Pete, for your help on the show. Most importantly, our growing group of loyal listeners. Next week, we've got Dr. Peter DiCarlo of Drexel University. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the home chem studies that he's been working on. So the chemistry of the indoor environment. We'll be back next Friday with the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reed saying thanks for listening.